I sure love 1-1. Got a little mushroom, got our power up going.
お前はもう死んでいる。何?
Took a hit, but that's alright. That's okay, we can just keep going. We're still in it. We're still in it. What's this? What? I needed to keep that mushroom? So I couldn't have taken damage there? Like, why? Like, I thought we could still beat the level. Well, I guess I have a death spike. I guess I'll kill myself now. Thanks. Today's topic is on self-destruct blocks, also known as SDLocks. Self-destruct blocks, or SDLocks, are situations when you can no longer win in a level, but you can kill yourself. So for example, if I jump up here, there's no longer any way for Mario to reach the goalpost. But I can kill myself because I have a death spike over here. SDLocks are different from softlocks, which are situations when you can no longer win in a level, but you also can't kill yourself anymore. And these are generally considered across the board. There's no argument that this is just bad. One type of SDLock is an anti-softlock, which is a situation when you can no longer win in the level, Mario can no longer reach the goalpost. He can kill himself on that spike. The difference is that Mario generally has to work for it to be able to kill himself, usually through some sort of janky game to be able to reach a death spike. Just to be clear, in this video, when I talk about SDLocks, I will not usually be talking about anti-softlocks. I'm going to consider them as a completely separate category, even though they are a type of SDLock. Just to recap, this is a softlock, this is an SDLock, this is an anti-softlock, which is a type of SDLock. While softlocks are universally considered to be terrible level design, SDLocks are a much more contentious topic. Today I'm going to focus on why you should try to avoid SDLocks as much as possible, and in what sort of situations they'll be generally considered to be okay. SDLocks come in a variety of different forms. So here I'll give a couple of different examples. If I had this dry bone shell, now, oh, I missed my target, now I'm soft locked. Now I can fix the soft lock and turn it into an SDLock if instead I put a death spike there. So now when I miss my target and I don't have my dry bone shell, well, at least I can kill myself, but that doesn't really fix the problem that I can no longer progress in the level. This would be a soft lock. If you spin jump up here, now I can't get back down. That would be bad. So what you could normally do is add a spike. So here we have this situation where now Mario has to make an active effort to go kill himself on that spike. An alternative for that same setup is having a thwomp with no ceiling there, so that if Mario goes up there, now he's automatically crushed. However, many SDLocks just arise from some awkward situations. For example, with this thwomp, if I trigger the thwomp and now I can't go forward, because of that one-way wall, there's actually no way for me to progress in the level. Right now, I'm SD-locked. Another very common SD-lock is with solid P blocks, where here, if I go grab this key, and the P-switch timer runs out while I'm in this little hole, then I'll be soft-locked inside of here. We can turn the soft lock into an SD-lock by adding a little death spike. So if Mario gets trapped in here, at least he can kill himself on the death spike. You can see the general trend here, that many SD-locks come from soft locks that you just throw in a way to die, so that you can't complain that there's a soft lock, because there's not a soft lock if you can kill yourself. However, this is not always the best design. It should be mentioned that many troll levels revolve around tricking Mario into accidentally SD-locking himself. And usually, we'll give some sort of hint during that time when you're SD-locked, so like you can have whatever time you need to read the hint before trying again. This is so deeply ingrained that I don't think anyone will complain about SD-locks being present in troll levels. And I know this is a contentious topic because very many people in the Mario community are very used to, oh, I'll just kill myself on a death spike because it's used in so many levels. So to help me out here, I went around asking a large number of streamers and reputable makers their opinion on this topic. Whenever I approach someone on this topic, I would come to them with this kind of stock message. And since I have my own opinion here, I want you to understand that everyone I asked is in the video. Even if they said something that I don't agree with, they're in. A lot of it was candid, not really rehearsed. Editing down their commentary, I tried my best to keep the meaning the same without omitting anything critical. With that, please listen to what various makers and streamers have to say on this topic.
I don't think it's ideal to get in a situation where your character has to suicide to keep moving forward. Like, take this game for example. Like, if I got stuck somewhere where, I don't know, I needed an item to go forward and dying was like the quickest way to get there. Like, that would be really weird, right? It's not the biggest crime you can commit, but it's one you should be aware of.
So the main problem with SDLocks is that you have, say, an objective, but if you miss it, like, let's say you do that. Now I'm SDlocked, I cannot go through. So if I'm an endless, I have to die and lose a life, when it's so easy to put, like, a pipe with a buzzing inside of it, or a reset door.
It's definitely something you want to avoid, but it's not really the end of the world. But in troll levels, it's actually kind of great because it's showing you what to do, and in that way, it's actually kind of like a tip in and of itself. The fact that you have nothing to do but die. And if a puzzle level, or even like a more traditional style level, were to use that same theory where if the forced death is specifically showing you what you did wrong and how you can do better next time, then I think it's fine, possibly even good. If not, it should definitely be avoided at all costs.
SDLocks are just a sign of lazy level design, really. It's like the maker knew I was going to make a mistake there, but I would be stuck, but they didn't want to put in any effort to offer an alternative there. It's just bad, it sucks, and I don't like it.
SDLocks, already explained by Loup, are obviously not a positive addition to your level. The most important reason is that you want people to enjoy your level, and SDLocks don't help doing that at all. But I personally also strongly discourage keeping them in your level, because dying is supposed to be an automatic punishment for mistakes, and in an SDLock you have to put in effort to kill yourself after a mistake. This is why SDLocks are a wrong way of punishment in Mario games, and should be removed as much as possible from your levels. Obviously there are exceptions, sometimes it's just inevitable to just have them in your level. Overall your goal though gotta be to find a better way to punish the mistakes than having an SDLock, and usually there is one.
Overall, I don't feel like it's necessarily a bad way as long as you're, this must be one of the so-called troll levels? Yeah. Puzzle or platformer. I don't feel like it breaks level, but it does make it... If you avoid it, it makes the level feel more polished in my opinion. So, I feel like it's terrible?
Evgar writes, SDLocks put players in an unwinnable situation. Unwinnable. It isn't putting them in an against all odds, challenging situation. You're putting them in a position where the only option is to do the one thing they've learned to not do. You're making the player kill himself.
You should really just avoid them at all costs. Because, as much as you can in any sort of style. Except for like troll levels, those are really like, unless you can do something like an anti-soft lock where you make it fun and not just a straight up like, oh, well, spike there, run into it, you know? Like, if you want SDLock, you need to make it fun somehow. Otherwise, don't have one. Like, if there's a level where there's like literally no others, like if the only way to make something work is to give them like an SDLock, maybe?
Donkey Mint writes, I think SDLocks can be acceptable, but it really depends on how apparent the SDLock is. If you have to wonder whether you lost, that's bad.
I think that, like, if a level puts you in a situation where you literally cannot win, that's not great. If somehow, like, a Kaizo level puts you into a box where the only option instead of continuing the Kaizo is dying, like, that's not very good. Generally, I feel like levels should be designed with opportunities to win every place that the player can get. The exception there is Kaizo. Technically, like, a practice door would be an SDLock, because if you play the level from that point and you have to fail a clear condition, then that is technically an SDLock. Those are fine, and I feel like there are certain situations where that's fine. Troll levels, yeah, there are a lot of cases where they're not, and generally you should probably seek to eliminate them if they do not fit within what the level is trying to accomplish.
Like, if you're making a Kaizo level, SDLocks are perfectly fine. But if you're making a traditional level, for example, I wouldn't really say it's a good idea. A lot of people assume that they're always able to beat or achieve a victory, no matter what state they've gotten themselves in. So unless you made it really, really obvious, I would avoid it.
Like, if the level tells you in a reasonable time frame that you need whatever item to proceed and you don't have it, I don't think it's an issue.
is it depends on the type of level you're playing. If you're playing a level that presents itself as a traditional level, a traditional Mario level, right? Then I would think that an SD lock is much less forgivable. But if you're playing, you know, a Kaizo level where, you know, you've already died a dozen times, just getting to that SD lock. Oh, shit. Save me, cutscene. The SD lock is negligible, right? Because you know what you're getting yourself into, right?
Tino writes, God damn it, Tino. I'm going to paraphrase for brevity. Generally, avoid SD locks. With the exception of troll levels, it's not a bad thing to get rid of them. What differs, though, is in how much of a deal it is to have an SD lock depending on the type of level, how the level is built, and how hard it is to get trapped into them. It doesn't make much of a difference if it's hard to get SD locked, or if you obviously messed up, or if it would be very hard to remove that SD lock from your level. Sometimes you shouldn't just try to get rid of SD locks at any cost. In puzzle levels, you should definitely get rid of them, since they should be beatable at any time and can become frustrating if you get into one there. Or in general, levels where you get SD locked pretty easily, or where it's not necessarily your fault, especially if you have to redo a lot after.
If you have a good setup, I actually love those trolls.
In troll levels, SD locks, in my opinion, are 100% perfectly fine, because the whole point of a troll level is to make you think that something is the right way to go, and then it's not. And often that involves making something that looks safe, but then ends up not being. If you don't allow for times where you really can't progress and then you're just sort of locked in a box, it really limits the amount that you can create and sort of mislead people in that way. So for puzzles too, SD locks are not necessarily a positive thing, but a good thing to not necessarily try to avoid at all costs, because it can limit the sort of creativity that you can do.
If it's a troll level, then it is there to make sure that you don't break the level and people can play it, right? And if it's not a troll level, then it's just not a really good design level.
You never want to make the player ask themselves, can I continue or am I already dead? That lack of clarity stays with them through the whole level. Once you plant the possibility of an SD lock at the back of their minds, they may start to assume that certain locations are SD locks or even soft locks before trying hard enough to look for the solution. It undermines the player's trust in your level and the sense that your design is playing fair.
I think they're stupid most of the time. If the situation demands that you already have the knowledge beforehand, and if it's extremely fair, I'm okay with it. Because, you know, there's a condition at some point. When the condition is, like, blind and you have no idea what you're doing, and on your first try, you have to trial and error understanding what the contraption or boss fight or minigame or whatever you're doing needs to be trial and error. Like, what's the point? I think it's stupid.
In a regular traditional level, you don't want to have to be forced to kill your player. You don't want to have to be forced to kill yourself and have to do everything all over again to continue. So having something where you're stuck in a box, I mean, I would reserve that for puzzles, I would reserve that for troll levels, but not something like a speed run. I would not reserve that for traditional levels, even precision levels. Like, you wouldn't want the player to be forced to kill themselves. To touch on troll levels where you are quite literally being thrown into a box because then it becomes appropriate.
I think that in general, minimizing SD locks is a good goal for all puzzles. Keeping the player's focus on the puzzle is important. You want to keep the player thinking and experimenting. Starting over can break concentration. Minimalistic and one-screen puzzles are the only type of puzzle that I consider SD locks acceptable. Working around SD locks in these types of puzzles can sometimes come at the cost of reduced diversity of interaction and increased visual noise. Overall, my goal for puzzles is to minimize SD locks without compromising interesting interactions.
It depends on the level. If it's a troll level, sure. There are like some puzzle levels where you're doing a lot of like messing around and trying to figure stuff out. I think just by the nature of those levels' design, it's not a big deal. In like a Kaizo level or a platformer though, I think SD locks are kind of just like, I don't want to say lazy design, but I don't think they're very good design. So they are going to exist sometimes for design stuff. It can happen, but if that's like your method in the level of killing the player, I do think it's probably not the best design. So if you are going to get SD locked, it needs to be obvious to the player that they are SD locked. Like, oh, I made a mistake and now I have to die. But yeah, if you're in a puzzle and you're SD locked and you're like not even sure why or if you're doing it right, then that's just bad design.
Naturally, some people are fine with SD locks and just see it as another part of playing Mario. Here is some of their commentary.
I don't really care. I mean, as long as you can kill yourself.
It doesn't really bother me, honestly. I mean, at least it's a spike. I see it in a lot of levels, so it's to be expected, I'd say. You can just get to a checkpoint and just try again. It doesn't bother me, honestly.
I am for him. So you have a clear condition, but Nintendo didn't leave you a way to force you to take your Mario, like to take a life. Nintendo doesn't make it to where you just die. Like if you fail a clear condition, you just die. The SD locks are a good way to kind of implement something that Nintendo should have already implemented.
I think that's fine. I don't think that's really an issue. I mean, sucks for Endless, but frankly, I don't really care about it.
Those are fine. As long as the person knows why. But yeah, no, I don't mind self-destruct locks. I play a lot of troll levels. In a normal level, don't overuse it, and use it more like troll levels do, where you have a hint at least to tell you what locked you out. So if you get to the end and there's a mushroom check, have some sort of hint saying that it's a mushroom check or something. Just don't have it be completely blind.
Now that I've shown you everyone else's opinion, I'm going to give you my own. SD locks are in general terrible level design because you're forcing the player into an awkward situation where they can no longer win in the level. And usually, an SD lock is being used to lazily cover up a soft lock without really addressing the key issue at hand, which is, why can you no longer beat the level anymore? I still believe that there are three main exceptions to the rule where SD locks can be fine. One is in troll levels, where it's just part of the culture of making and playing troll levels. The second is in garbage levels, levels that are intentionally designed to be bad. And in those sorts of levels, everything is fair game. SD locks, soft locks, combo locks, find my hidden block locks, everything. But again, those are levels that are intended to be terrible. The last major exception are SD locks that are inherent to the level's design. For example, a don't land clear condition level is an SD lock just waiting to happen. Because if you jump anywhere, even just at spawn for a moment, now you can no longer beat the level. This does not mean that don't land clear condition levels are inherently bad. Alright, it's just the nature of the beast. Another time when an SD lock isn't just okay, but absolutely mandatory is in a freeform red coin level. Because if Mario collects the safety coin without completing the key, he needs to die. Because of the way that red coins are implemented in the game, we can't just let Mario go on because there's a risk of key death in the level. My biggest issue with SD locks is when you have completely avoidable SD locks. These are SD locks that aren't really inherent to a level's design, they don't have to be there, and ones that have a clear, obvious workaround to it, to the point where leaving them in your level is a sign of either laziness or incompetence. We return to this example with the P-switch and solid P blocks. This is an example of an SD lock that is pretty unjustifiable because there are so many obvious ways to be able to get rid of it. One potential option is to use brick blocks, so that when Mario collects the coins, now he never gets trapped in here with the key ever again. Let's say brick blocks would introduce cheese into your level, there's still another solution here where you can just have a semi-solid to escape, so even if the P-switch runs out, Mario has a way out. Let's say that the point of this obstacle is for Mario to be able to run in, grab the key, and quickly come back. Now I've put dotted P blocks below, so if the P-switch runs out while Mario's in the room, now he drops to his death. Now, some people might say, well, it's the same thing if you have to die. While there may not seem to be a difference on the surface, dying to a hazard in a Mario game is completely different from compulsory suicide for many of the reasons described before. For this reason, one of the main fixes for SD locks is to replace it with an automatic death. Whenever you have a soft lock in your level, your first thought needs to be, why does this situation happen? Not, how do we give the player a way to kill themselves? With an SD lock, normally you have to start getting creative to make sure that situation does not happen in the first place. So let's give some more examples. Many SD locks can be fixed with resettable mechanisms. So for example, here, if I screw up with the dry bone shell, I can just try again. And this is a lot less frustrating than, oh, I guess I have to jump into a spike now. this is also a situation where this SD lock is completely avoidable. Or sometimes with your setup or your level idea, you can't avoid an SD lock. But in those situations, if you want to make your level as best as it can possibly be, you need to mitigate some of those situations. This happens super frequently in puzzle levels, where there are so many puzzle levels that have horrendous SD locks everywhere. Take this mock setup, for example. Here, if I hit this question mark block, oh, now there's no more mushroom. I'm not soft locked because I can kill myself. But why is this happening in a puzzle level? All right, you're basically like adding ways for the puzzle to no longer be beatable. How about this version? Here, if I hit the mushroom, it won't fall into a pit. But now I can still collect the mushroom at the wrong time. Oh, now I can't get that key. And I can break this block, but without the key, I'm still gonna have to kill myself. Still not soft locked, but I'm SD locked. Again, I have to ask the question, is this an avoidable SD lock? Is this a situation that needs to happen for the level to function? And can we reduce how terrible this SD lock is right now? Or one of the issues with that SD lock is that I don't necessarily know in advance that this block contains a mushroom. So now with that mushroom indicator, I am in a much better position to analyze the room as a whole and try to figure out a solution to the puzzle. And so now here I can see that I have to grab that key first, and then we grab the mushroom, and now we're great to just spin jump on that brick block to finish the... Well, I guess I'm SD locked again. So now you see that SD lock is better, but we still have an issue where it's very easy to accidentally put yourself in a situation where the level is no longer beatable. And that is still not good. We can further make this level much safer by putting a donut block over that spike, so that when Mario comes over, it's a lot harder for him to accidentally touch that spike, and he can get through the key door much more easily. Again, these steps all reduce the SD locks that are present. However, this room still has the issue of if I just grab the mushroom first, now I'm screwed. Or if I accidentally, for whatever reason, come in here first without the key, now I'm SD locked again. It's optimal to not have the SD lock at all, but remember that there's always things that we can do to reduce the SD lock potential and make it so that you can't accidentally screw yourself and make the level no longer beatable. We can further improve this puzzle by making it fully resettable and completely removing any sort of SD lock in it. So here I've replaced the one-time use mushroom with a resettable blaster. I replaced the one-time use key with an on-off switch that resets with the room, and a reset door to power down Big Mario so the whole thing can work smoothly. You notice that this puzzle required a massive overhaul to remove the SD lock, to the point where most people would say probably not worth fixing. And part of why this happened is because the puzzle was built from the ground up with zero consideration for SD lock potential. Usually when puzzles are built with SD locks in mind, the fixes required to remove them aren't going to be so terrible as in this example. But you see, in general, this setup is now much more free of spaghetti, because now if I screw up and get the mushroom at the wrong time, I can just try again. Now, some people will say like, oh, well, that means that this is just a very easy puzzle. To them, I'll say, if your puzzle is easy just because you can reset it and not die, then it probably was not a very hard puzzle to begin with, just an annoying puzzle to play. The joy of a puzzle level comes from actually solving the puzzle, from figuring out how the pieces are supposed to come together, and not from the actual physical task of hitting the switches and pulling the levers in whatever order. In general, whenever a player is forced to kill himself in a puzzle level, you're forcing them to replay the unfun part of a puzzle level, the part where they already know the solution and they're just kind of clicking the buttons to make it work. The analogy I'll frequently make is that it's like a Rubik's Cube that every so often when you turn it, blades will come out to cut you up. And if the blades touch you, the entire Rubik's Cube will reset itself because you have to start over. Sometimes it's unavoidable that some puzzle ideas will have SD locks associated with them. But in any case, you really want to make this scenario as unlikely to occur as possible. The worst that can happen is that you get to the good part of a puzzle level where you're stumped and you don't know how to progress, but you've seen an SD lock before, so the player reasons they should kill himself and try something else. But they're actually on the road to success, which leads them to going in circles until they eventually rage quit. Here's some more examples of common SD locks. Here's a setup that's similar to something I saw in a level recently. If you go over here and you don't hit the on-off switch, now you're soft locked. Many people suggested, well, just put a death spike. So let's say, oh, we missed. Well, I guess I get to kill myself now. But just think to yourself, is this an avoidable SD lock? Does this need to exist? The much simpler solution, which is more standard in a Kaizo level, is to just not have that box in the first place. To just have that set of dotted line blocks so that if Mario misses the target and doesn't hit the on-off switch, then he just falls into a pit and dies. That's what happens in a normal Kaizo level. SDLocks also have no place in traditional style levels, where the whole point of traditional style level is you can do whatever and make it work. Because otherwise, why are you making a traditional style level? In traditional style levels, it's pretty obvious that you don't need to keep your power-ups. It would be implied from the level's design that you don't need to keep your power-up. So if you have a surprise mushroom check at the end of a traditional style level, the player is definitely going to be surprised and be very mad. You can make an argument for traditional style levels that use power-ups, but that's usually pretty tough, a pretty tough sell. I'll show some examples of SDLocks in real levels and what I've done to address them. I don't want to share other people's levels on this topic because it's going to be like throwing shade and I don't want to start that. This level has a boss as a winged muncher in a Fire Koopa clown car that you need to break brick blocks so you can progress to the goal axe. The issue I was having with this level when I was making it on stream is that sometimes this boss would despawn when Mario would get too far. One of my viewers said, just add a death spike in this room so it's no longer a soft lock. If you've been paying attention, that's the wrong answer. The solution is not to add a death spike in this level, which I'm absolutely not doing. The solution is to make the level so that the boss cannot despawn, because the boss should not be despawning. It's not Mario's job to keep the boss spawned. And with that, now the boss fight works seamlessly. Here's an example of one of my levels that has an SD lock in it because of the nature of the idea. So here you can see that it's a low grav frog bounce level as a light Kaizo. From the level structure, it's very obvious to everyone who plays this that you're not supposed to take damage. Okay, the frog suit is absolutely not optional in this level. And if you were to take damage with this frog suit, like right here, people always say, oh, cheese, when they get to this pipe, because they acknowledge, I'm gonna check for that frog suit. They know it's coming, and there's no surprise. So people are fine with that frog suit check. This is an example of an SD lock done correctly, because also if you get up there, the level will automatically kill you. The only way you can effectively hang out indefinitely is on one of those vines. You'll see this very frequently in Kaizo levels that are built around a power-up, like a Frog Kaizo, or Cape Kaizo, or P-Balloon Kaizo, Big Mario Kaizo, blah, 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 all right? From those levels, it's very obvious that you need that power-up to progress. And if you lose that power-up, you're boned. For that type of level, it's the nature of the beast that there's probably going to be an SD lock in it. What can you do to mitigate this? Well, you'll see in this level and many well-made Kaizo levels, there's no place for Mario to just land and stay there indefinitely. Every spot is covered by munchers, death pits, etc. So the only spots that you can land on are the place that you do need to go to. And that mitigates the SD lock because you're not having Mario kill himself. While the overwhelming majority of my puzzle levels have no SD locks in them, here I will show you an example of a puzzle level where I knowingly and willingly added an SD lock to it artificially in order to make the level function better. This is a logic gate puzzle level. The point of the level is that you look at the logic circuit, you figure out, okay, what is the combination of inputs that needs to be put in order to make the level function and get the key, and if you put in the wrong code, you don't get the key. The answer to every room is effectively a binary combo lock, and I've designed all my mechanisms to be completely resettable. However, this puzzle level has a weakness. As I'm using small combo locks to keep the logic circuits reasonable, they're effectively 8 to 16 combination locks for each room, which means that they can be easily brute forced, and many people will try to brute force the answer. This changes the level from a fun puzzle playing experience to one where the optimal strategy is a very unfun brute force strategy. Many puzzle makers would say, okay, well, you put in the wrong combination, here's a death spike, just try again from the checkpoint. While the SD lock is extremely successful at stopping people from trying to brute force this level and having a very unfun experience, it still sucks to lose your progress in a puzzle level, even with checkpoints. Can we do better? Why does this SD lock need to exist in the level? Only to dissuade brute force. The solution here is to have a much more gentle touch. What if I just accidentally touch the button? Is there a way for me to still keep playing the level and not just automatically lose? As the SD lock is only as helpful as it helps the level achieve its main goal. As long as people are not brute forcing this level, that is sufficient. We don't necessarily need to punish people for making mistakes. So in this level, if you accidentally put in the wrong code, now a muncher drops, so you can reset the room. But the difference is now we no longer have a Shelmet. We've lost our one free shot at resetting the level. This is sufficient to stop people from brute forcing the level while still allowing the player to make some sort of mistake in the level. What I'll end on is, whenever you have an SD lock, think, does this have to be in the level? Or is there a way to design around it? The most common solutions to an SD lock are to either make that section resettable or avoid the bad situation in the first place. But usually you'll need to get creative. Not all SD locks are created equal. A soft lock is worse than an SD lock that's very easy to accidentally put yourself into, which is worse than an SD lock that you probably won't get into accidentally, which is worse than an SD lock that is completely reasonable and expected by the player, and is usually worse than just not having one at all. So as always, use your best judgment. While I'm also giving my own opinion, I made sure to include as many other people's opinion in this video as possible because I recognize that it's not just me. Feel free to leave your own opinions in the comments below. I hope this guide helped you better understand and learn how to mitigate SD locks in general. If you like this comment, feel free to subscribe for more, and I'll see you around, guys. Later.